Hello, everybody. I have dear Pushpa here today. I would like to throw it over to you, Pushpa, to introduce yourself.
Hi, Ali. Thank you so much for inviting me. So my name's Pushpa Vaghela. I'm the founder for Women's Mentoring Foundation and also the founder for Leaders by Design.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, in this campaign, I'm just going to be asking you a few questions. Tell me, what is one mental health tactic that you yourself use? You know, not every day is going to be the best day in the world. So what's one tactic that you use that's helpful for your mental well-being?
I consciously, if I feel that my mind's being compromised or my emotions are, I'll stay quiet for a second, Ali, and maybe just take a deep breath. But I will go quiet because I've experienced so much where there's been retaliation or I felt that I need to explain further, and that all has caused more conflict with whatever was going on, even if it was within me. I just take a step back and take a deep breath in and go quiet for a moment.
That's a great one. It's really interesting. Actually, we're giving a few workshops on client aggression at the moment, and that is so important, knowing when to intervene and when to not intervene. So sometimes taking that step out and that breath can reassess whether it's a moment to take it further or just pause. So thank you. Great insight. Now, the message of hope, it's been explained before that this campaign really, you know, given the context of a pandemic, mental health is so important. There are some individuals right now that may not be coping. They could be in the eye of that storm. You know, we've all gone through so much. And I'd like to know from you, what's your message of hope that someone may be in the eye of the storm right now? What do you think is a message of hope they may need to hear?
For sure. I would definitely say is that if you have stigma around whatever you're going through, is eliminate that. Let go of things that you feel are not serving you, whether it's mentally, emotionally, even on your physical body. And it's okay to talk to somebody. And one of the great ways of talking to other people is starting by listening to other people. Because you'll really experience firsthand how that much helps the other person when you're just listening.
Yeah.
And then right now we have to be here for each other. So please, please, please reach out. GPs are offering I think double the amount of psychology sessions. And it's not necessarily to say that you have mental health issues. It might just be a worry or something that you're concerned about. Talk it out, you know, rather than pondering on it for a long-term process.
Yeah, for sure. Talk therapy is quite an important and first point of call for a lot of GP services for psychology counselling. But what I really resonated with in the various things you just mentioned is actually, you know, identify what it is that could be causing some of that stress and, you know, get rid of it. You know, that can be hard. Kind of like I've talked to some individuals, like let's say it's an increased workload that's really, really stressing them. Telling them to decrease their workload can make them stress even more. You know, do you have any advice for if someone's not wanting to let go of that stressor, how can we approach that one?
Yeah, again, it comes back to really looking after yourself. And when we get stressed out or when we start, you know, getting a little bit anxious or worried about what's going on, it's because we're not looking beyond what there is. It's like as if we're living in this box and everything is just coming on top of each other. Again, like I mentioned, you know, if you have the ability to take a step back, if you can reach out to other people, because that overwhelm is not going to go and things will keep coming on you. You know, problems are always going to be here. And this is one thing that I really share with my clients is that what's the issue? What's the concern? And then 95% of the time, let's look for a solution. You're not on your own. You know, there's so many organizations, especially like yourself, Ali, Mind Blank, that are willing to help and really in a confidential space, letting go, especially things that have happened in the past, whether it's transgressional for you or whether you've come on board with issues that are transgenerational, because where transgenerational comes in is that you don't realize you're going through the issues or where they're coming from. And letting go is harder for some people if they don't know how. If they've constantly, it's like, you know, when you're a hoarder and you're accumulating and you're having to let go, it's really difficult to make that decision, because that holding on to things or issues or concerns becomes a part of your identity. And I would suggest that, like, when we do let go, it's really important that we bring in great things to replace that. We can't leave that gap. So definitely, you know, reaching out for professional help or therapy would be beneficial. The most important thing is to just know that you're not on your own. And honestly, there are people there to help you. And it was a part of my journey because I'm pretty resilient, but even I was tearing my hair out when my mindset was compromised, my emotions were compromised. And luckily I came out of it. But during that time, I saw a lot of people fall through the cracks because they didn't know where the path was or which way to take forward.
Yeah, for sure. Very deep insights there, Pushpa, and no doubt, like, we can spend hours unpacking a lot of that. You know, you're just touching the surface. But yeah, I do feel it's helpful for viewers and whatnot to know, you know, we're not all created equally. You know, like what you mentioned, there could be transgenerational trauma. So one scenario, for example, each individual could respond differently. So someone could just shrug it off and it's just another work day, and yet the next person could be confronted with it and it could be extremely traumatizing for them. So we don't know what goes on behind closed doors or what people are carrying around, for sure.
I was just going to say to that, add to that, is that we are unique. And say two people in the workplace are going through the same thing, but the emotions they've attached, the meaning they attach, it's like watching a movie. Somebody will interpret it in a different way. And it's the same with DV or, you know, the temptation to commit suicide. We've all put a meaning to it as to why we want to take that path, right? Hence, being judgmental, being opinionated, you know, criticizing, not for others, but you're criticizing yourself, especially when you're going through anxiety or stress or depression. It starts with you looking at yourself and the opinion and judgment of who you are and the way that you're always comparing yourself to others.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for sharing that. Now, the last question in this campaign is, it's actually about, this is a suicide prevention initiative, and we are asking people if they have either direct lived experience of suicide ideation or experience helping support others who may be suicidal. I'm just interested in hearing some insights of some tactics or some action steps that have been helpful, because what I've noticed is a lot of the times when I'm talking to people, many have actually overcome some of their hardest difficulties, and now they actually realize there could be one direct action or several that have helped support them. And I know that the reason I'm asking this question is, you know, we need to build these skills. We're not going to be like great at it all the time, or if you've never dealt with a high-end difficult scenario before, you may feel uncomfortable with it. But just share with us what some actions or some insights that could be helpful for someone that may need to hear it.
Yeah, suicide's a very tender point at the moment. I think over the last 4 weeks, I've heard of 12 deaths. And one was a student that just set himself on fire. One was actually a really great teacher that created a mental health program, and he committed suicide as well. So again, it comes back to where is that person living? So when I've worked with clients that have attempted suicide, you know, they've cut themselves or they've taken the tablets. The intention wasn't always there that I want to die, otherwise that would have happened. It's a cry out for help, like I need help. And, you know, they think that by harming ourselves in the hope that they're not going to wake up, but it's not so severe that they have woken up. So it's a cry out for a lot of people. And for unfortunately for those that we haven't been able to reach or help, they've already committed suicide.
Just to point out that you are actually a mental health professional. So if you are going to help guide someone, you do have those tactics to know how to intervene if that person is at risk to themselves, for sure. But I mean, you just mentioned that breaking a pattern, the basic triangle of support needs: physiology. How are we presenting within our body? Physiology. I was chatting to a school the other day about student aggression, and to change, like if there's two students that were fighting, there was this really interesting insight as to how to snap them out of it so that you yourself don't have to be in harm's way. It just happened organically, but someone threw a bottle of water at them and it just shocked them and it stopped this aggressive moment, and it just like, what? And pushed them back into their body. So when you just mentioned that physiology, that's what it reminded me of. But yeah, definitely not something for a beginner or not someone who's not skilled as a mental health professional to necessarily take, because if they don't feel confident in having the skills to be able to bring that person around, it may not be that helpful. But from what you've been sharing, it does remind me of this element in this suicide prevention sector. Like, is that just a reminder that we can only do so much? Because sometimes some people just, perhaps that's the pathway they do want to take, and that's all that we can do is just kind of like acknowledge or accept that somehow in amongst that grief and bereavement. And it's horrific if we ever get to that point. There are many circumstances where it doesn't have to get to that point. But some people are really, really hurting, for sure. Is there any other insights or actions you wanted to share there?
Yeah, for like we work with people that have been suicidal and been able to get them on the other side. And you're right, Ali. It comes down to even the people that are close to them to see if there's changes in their language patterns, if there's changes in their physiology, what behavioral patterns are different to what they were doing before, and really being intuitive with the other person. Yep. Every suicidal person, the story that they're running in their head is totally different. And the truth of the matter is that how many of us are going to be willing to just be observant to see if something's happened? And I think more than anything else right now, with the exceptional work that you're doing, is also educating the parents or the carers or the teachers or just the general public, is that please be aware, there might be a danger of something. Like with a student that burnt himself, there was a student prior to that called me probably 2 or 3 days before and said he was going to be kicked out of Australia because he missed some of his university because his father had passed away. And I said to him, okay, let's get you aside, let's get you to a psychologist.
Yes.
Through the GP structure, because even though he reached out to me for the support on the neurological, what's going on with my on the neuro strategy side of things, which I said I could help him, but I said let's get the GP there. And then 2 days later, I heard about this boy that burnt himself in the Gold Coast, and I was like, my heart jolted because I thought it was him. Not that, it was a relief, but I was saddened for the boy that it had happened. So it's really dependent. Like, this is great what you're doing, is that how can we wake our community up so that they become more observant? And you and I both know that not all suicides are reported, right?
Yeah, for sure. And from what I hear or see in the suicide prevention sector as well is, unfortunately, not all signs do present. Sometimes they do, and there's some pretty obvious ones sometimes, if someone's talking about suicide or making plans, etc. And it puts us as a community member into an uncomfortable place. Just having this conversation with you now, it could be uncomfortable for some people. But just knowing that if they are sharing these things with you, and I'll just share an example, someone who I've been able to support had laid out the dress they wanted to be buried in very somber, and it's like, that was intense, but I've never heard that direct action from that person before. That was a red flag, but they've gone through cycles where they had expressed, different levels of ideation, but that was just underneath it all is pain. That's a common thread that I've seen time and time again, is pain. And the need is sometimes these prompts are, without knowing how to verbalize it, is, help. Help without saying help. It's the body language saying help. It's the physiology saying help. It's I don't have any other choices, but it's manifesting right now that there is help needed. And I fortunately have not been in a position where I've lost anyone directly in my network, but I can share through my own personal recovery journey. Post-traumatic stress at one stage was so intense for me that I had that heavy heart, so much pain that, and I've shared this in one of the other stories, but so much pain that I did reach out to alcohol to numb. And it was only one day that I did that, and I knew I'd hit a next level of rock bottom for me as an individual. But I can now see and have that insight as to why people reach out to some of these poison substances, to just, this pain is so intense, I don't know what else to do,
And Ali, when you share that, and I'll be honest with you because I know this is going to help others, is that when my husband died, it was pretty horrendous. Like, I lost my mom when I was 11. She was only 42. Then, 17 years later, my husband died when he was only in his 40s, and I was in my 30s. But I used to visualize myself in the coffin wearing my red sari, and all those that had hurt me were crying.
Yeah.
And I just thought, and I used to pray for that day to come, is that when is it going to come? Because it was enough. I'd had enough.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, and it wasn't even in a strength. I just felt I was guided. I was guided to take this step or guided to take that step. Mm-hmm. And for somebody that had no education past college to finally, get that master's in accounting, I didn't even understand why I was doing it, but that was my ticket to getting out of that situation, to coming all the way across hemispheres to Australia. So sometimes suicidal people don't see what's in front of them. They're just living in this space of what's going on currently. All this is closed, so their communication is all closed. So I do a little bit of holistic work as well, and they're just living in this 60,000 thoughts a day of reliving of what's happened. They're living in the past, they're not here in the present, and it's painful, it's sad, because they're not even attached to their emotions, because they're telling themselves what they're feeling. But if some, like you're saying, when we verbalize, when we talk, we're releasing, we're opening up, it's only then that they can truly start connecting with their emotions and seeing or even remembering the good feelings, because they haven't felt that for a while.
Yeah, for sure. Again, there's a lot to unpack there, but I just want to point out the one thing that resonated there for me was the image that you mentioned, with you in the coffin with the loved ones around you. The reason I'm mentioning that is because people have deliberately told me before that is an insight that they think of that turned them around. Seeing the loss and grief around with the loved ones around them, if I made this decision, what would happen to those around me, was a strong enough image to pull out a why to keep taking a step forward. And look, it's just going to be a different journey for each and every one of us. But thank you for sharing that, because, again, it just helps bring back some insights of normality. I don't like using the word normal or labels, or, sometimes it is an illness, for example, that keeps them in this deep, dark space because it's, a deep pattern embedded by that stage. But it is actually a common experience that we have all, or touch wood, not all of us have, but majority community can share at least one person or someone around them that they've seen some insights in this space. So I appreciate you opening up and Smashing the stigma on a taboo subject matter.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you for inviting me here and to share that insight. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. The last question to you is, if anyone resonated with your story today, how can they stay in touch? How can they connect with you?
For sure. So as Ali mentioned, I do a lot of work in the clinical neuro and cognitive behavioral therapy and hypnotherapy. My email is info@womensmentoringfoundation.com, or you can contact me directly on any social media site. So it's Pushpa Vaghela. And my number is 0497998829. And please, please, please don't ever think that you're doing the wrong thing by reaching out. We're here for you. And we can help you for sure, without a doubt. Please do reach out, because we want to hold your hand through whatever you're going through.
Yeah. Just to close this, again, you've just inspired me to say something, is that I 100% agree with what you just said. And, you know, we often have to tell this to teenagers in particular, but children is like, sometimes as individuals, we muster all the courage we have to tell someone or to reach out and seek help. But sometimes it could be the system or the person. Sometimes the pathway lets people down. And that can stagnate help seeking, you know, because I tried that, it doesn't work, I'm all on my own for this, you know. But there are people like lovely Pushpa that do exist, you know, and even the services that we have, there's some fantastic services in community that really do want to help. And sometimes it can be really counterproductive if we're waiting until a crisis, we're waiting too late to seek help, because then people can't always pick up the phone 24/7. And I know we do have some great crisis lines, etc., that can catch some of that need. But the last thing that we would want, you know, anyone in community that needs help to do is to turn around or turn away from these help services just because that initial pathway or connection didn't quite work for them. So we do need to keep trying, and Pushpa's a classic example of someone who may not be direct clinical mental health services through the GP, but she could be someone in community that is skilled up that could help support. So thank you for sharing that, and I'll drop your information in the story below. So thank you. I look forward to sharing the next story as we continue this campaign. Thanks, Pushpa, for being a guest today.
Yeah, thank you, Ali. And I just wanted to add that one thing on that is that I've traveled that journey only 2 years ago, as you know, that all the obstacles and the system failures and everything that happened, there was no way forward until I told somebody official that, you know what, stop, don't worry about me anymore, I'm going to go and kill myself. And that's when they got a social worker involved. So I truly understand and have empathy. There are going to be obstacles, but like there's Ali, there's me here, we've traveled the journey, and we can truly help you.
Yeah, right. So sometimes there are some extreme, how do you say it, variables that we need to bring in to help the system understand the need or emergency. And I will just reflect on one of the other stories we've heard where someone had actually championed to get that support for their colleague, because what had happened was they did call out the services and the services were all booked out. And that person's mental health spiraled even further. So the bystander refused to let that be an option and took their side and championed until there was an opening. So there are things that we can do when the service pathways don't necessarily work according to plan.
For sure.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, I look forward to sharing more stories with you all shortly.